500 years of football expertise and the future of the game. Powered by Sumer Sports. Come together. Breaking down the big board with the guys that were in the room. On today's panel, we are joined by Sumer Sports senior evaluator and former assistant GM of the Miami Dolphins, Eric Stokes. Also on the panel is Sumer Sports senior cornerback evaluator and the NFL Alumni Academy's director of player personnel, Jeff Robinson. We're bringing it all together with the most sophisticated sports technology ever engineered. This is the Evaluation Secondary. The secondary is the NFL's lie detector. Every busted coverage, every blown assignment, every misstep, it's exposed instantly. Out here, you need speed, instincts, fearlessness, and the memory of a goldfish. One bad play can ruin a game, but one great play can decide a season. Scouts search for fluid hips, quick eyes, and quick feet, but mostly, they look for players who don't blink. Because downfield, in the back end, the cost of hesitation is a touchdown. Welcome to the Evaluation. I'm your host, Ator Ewan, and today we're talking defensive backs, and I'm joined by Eric Stokes.
Thanks for having me.
And Jeff Robinson.
Thanks for having me.
Jeff, can you start us off with your first player eval?
My first player is Mansoor Delane from LSU. He's a transfer from Virginia Tech University. He's a guy that checks all the boxes physically, mentally, athletically. He can make plays in space. He can return if he needs to. He's excellent in man and press coverage. He's very good with his toughness, run support, and tackling. Has very good ball skills, has excellent versatility. He's a guy that can do it all. He can match up with size. He can match up with speed. He's basically a guy that whatever offense you're playing against, you can put him in and he can cover somebody.
And how important is that versatility?
Versatility is very important. You know, he's played a lot inside at nickel. He's played outside. It's important because of the way that offenses are lining up these days with the motions, all the stacked formations. He's strong enough to challenge receivers at the line of scrimmage, but he also has the speed to run and cover in space. So his versatility, it's a plus for him, but it's a plus for all defenses in general.
Eric, who's your first player?
Yes, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, 6 foot, 205. He's a Thorpe Award winner. He's a two-time unanimous All-American, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. And then he was, freshman newcomer of the year in the SEC while he was playing at Alabama. So a really good, unique journey for him. But this guy tilts the field as a difference maker just with his rare football intelligence. Outstanding versatility. You see this guy aligned at a variety of positions as a big nickel, very good ball skills. He's had 6 interceptions in his career. He's got outstanding eyes and zone and processing skills. This is the strength of his game. The anticipation in his game, the ability to see route combinations unfold, and then he has very good toughness. He can play in any system. He played under 3 different defensive coordinators, 2 different schools. He can play man, he can play zone, and he's a physical tackler. Thing that is unique about him is not only is he a good hitter, but he is a good, sound, open field tackler as well, and then you just love his toughness. If you had the element that you might critique about his game is he's 6 foot maybe, and he's a little compact, and sometimes that shows up in his game. But as this guy translates to the NFL, this is a pillar player. This is a core player, as we would say it. This guy can transform your defense, and I would think that he would transition extremely well to the NFL level.
And he's a very good punt returner.
And he was a 5-star running back coming out of high school.
He can do it all.
So he checks all the boxes, yes.
He can do it all.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. And now it's time for our first deep dive from Sumer Sports senior data analyst and football integration lead, Sam Bruckhouse. Sam, take it away.
DBs are great for a deep dive, and these are 2 of the most premium DBs in this draft. Let's start off with Mansoor Delane. The word that popped out to me in this matchup was matchup, and that's what this guy is. He is an impact player, a blue chip player, an 8 on that press coverage. He's gonna get up in you, and he's gonna play great man coverage as well, which we have as a quality trait as well. The thing with these matchup corners, particularly in colleges, not asked to do a lot in the run game. We have a 4 rough Sumer trait on him in the run game. That's just gonna have to be something that he shows at the next level. Doesn't necessarily mean he can't do it, was just asked to be more of a cover corner at LSU. So let's move on to Caleb Downs, the premier safety in this draft. The reason why he's premier is he can do it all. You add zone coverage as a quality trait, a 7. You add press coverage as a quality trait, a 7. And you add his ability to decrease the probability that a great play happens in terms of expected points added, which means that he may make a tackle for 2 or 3 yards. There may be a slight gain, but he's making the plays that keeps the offense behind the chains. And that's why that emotional intelligence and that football IQ that Eric highlighted, I think really pairs together with the analytics here. One thing we're a little worried about is his speed, athleticism, but at that safety position, I believe that intelligence can overcome it.
Thank you, Sam. We got more players to discuss. Who's your second player you want to evaluate?
My next player is Avieon Terrell from Clemson University. He kind of reminds me of a former player that they had, Nate Wiggins. Very fast, excellent feet. He probably has the best feet out of any corner in this year's draft. But a leaner, slimmer frame, so you don't see him in the physical areas show up a lot. But his game transfers well to the NFL because he does things with his feet as opposed to his hands. So he can cover the bigger receivers and not get involved in the tussling matches where he's going to draw a lot of penalties. Has good eyes and processing ability, much better in man coverage where he can run and use his speed and quickness. He is excellent with his footwork, his hips. Not a physical defender, which gets him in trouble at times, but he has excellent man and press coverage. Toughness, he's good enough in run support. Versatility, he is versatile. You will see him line up in the slot, but he plays mostly outside, and he has the quick hips. He can flip, he can transition quickly. His game is all speed, all quickness, all agility.
And how much of that is a concern as far as his ability to provide run support?
Well, in the modern game, and I always tell people this, if you get a guy on the ground and you're a corner, you take that as a win. And that coach will be happy too, as long as you get that guy on the ground.
Absolutely. Eric?
Yes, I'm going to go with Zakee Wheatley from Penn State. He's 6'2", 202. He's a redshirt senior, 2-year starter. Played a lot of football at Penn State. This is a known commodity. This kid probably could have come out last year as well. You know, he has the ability to play both from depth. He can play off the hash. You see him play out of center field. And yet this year you saw him come down and work more down in the box, work more in the short to intermediate levels, work more as a top-down defender. And then you also saw the versatility in terms of him being on the line at multiple positions as a free safety, strong safety, or nickel. He has very good ball skills. He has 6 interceptions in his career. He has good eyes and processing, very good man and press coverage ability. This guy's natural to go out, cover slots out in the number 2 or number 3. He can cover tight ends. He has the size and length to match up in this area. And then he displays timing as a blitzer in both phases of the run and pass game, so he can impact the line of scrimmage. He has really good man skills to handle tight ends, and he can go over and match up over a slot, and so you see those movement skills and speed in that area as well. And then I really like his competitive nature. This guy, you know, flies to the ball. He's tough. He's not afraid to throw his body around, so always appreciate that aspect of it. Really see him converting. This guy's going to be a free with some nickel flexibility in his game, and he's just too athletic. This guy's going to find a way to get on the field, see him being a starter as he ascends in the league.
Is he ever not around the ball?
Rarely. This guy literally hair on fire player. Hair on fire player.
Love that. Love that. Sam, I got a need, and I need another deep dive.
Let me provide it, man. With Terrell, this is a spot I like to say where the eye meets the AI. This is a unique case. This is where the eye explains the AI. The AI did not really love how he performed in press coverage, but given the scouting report, it's because he's doing it with his feet rather than with his hands. More of an agile player, not going to get up and bang and get in those tussling matches that we see sometimes from bigger corners. Let's move on to Wheatley, hair on fire player. This is a guy who, when we look at the tracking data and we look at his alignments on the field, can line up pretty much anywhere, but does line up deep despite being a bigger player. And as a result, he is able to come down and make those tackles. His tackle probability, which we track on a 10th of a second by 10th of a second basis, is extremely high as a safety, and that's why we have him as a quality player at that trait.
Thank you, Sam. Jeff, you got one more player for us?
I have one more player, Colton Hood from Tennessee. He's got size, he's got length, he's got straight line quickness, agility. I'm not sold on his speed yet, which I think that'll be a big determining factor on him going forward, but all the rest of the tools he has. Eyes and processing ability. He can line up in the slot. He can play outside. Very good in man and press coverage. Where he struggles some is at the top of the route, getting in and out of his breaks. Toughness, run support, and tackling. He does a very good job. Excellent versatility. He has excellent ball skills. He has the strength to compete for the ball in traffic, and he does have the hands to finish and make plays on the ball. thing that you don't see him do consistently is bend because of his length. Sometimes getting in and out of his breaks, he's a little high in his transitions, which allows receivers to get on top of him. But you do see the speed show up after they get on top of him. His dad played in the league, so he has a very good understanding of the things that you need to do to prepare to play the game. Everywhere he goes, he shows up and he becomes the guy. You know, he was kind of a quiet guy at Auburn, at Colorado, but every time he played, he made plays. And then he shows up at Tennessee, same thing happened. So wherever he goes, he makes plays.
Thank you, Jeff. Eric, who you got?
Yes, Kamari Ramsey from USC, 6 foot, 205. You know, I think this guy's flying under the radar just a little bit. He missed 2 games this season with the knee injury. He also had food poisoning and missed the Illinois game. But let me tell you, this guy is a really good technician, is really how I would describe his game. I would say that his defensive coordinator, you know, also applauded him because this year he actually played out of position. He played more nickel, and traditionally he's been more of a free or strong. So due to need, you know, he went out and played in a position that he hadn't spent a lot of time in and really thrived. But what he does is he really understands his leverage, he understands his fit. He understands where the help is with the defense. I would say that his football mind is not going to lag too far behind Caleb Downs in terms of just his instincts and feel for the game, his ability to anticipate. He has good ball skills, but he only has 2 INTs, but I don't question his ability to track it and locate it. He has very good eyes and processing ability, good man and press coverage ability. This guy can cover tight ends. You saw the ability now to go out and cover slot receivers with being able to move out in the nickel. And then this guy's a contact seeker as a tackler, really good timing as a blitzer in both phases of the run-pass game. You know, again, it's another player that I see has the potential to be a core-type player. His intelligence and his instincts and intangibles are going to be off the charts as he goes through the process.
Thank you, Eric. Sam, take it away.
So let's start off with Ramsey. I think this is a place where the evaluation really adds some color into what happened this year. We did not necessarily love how he played in the run game. We had him as a 4, kind of a rough trait. But when you get a guy who is more used to playing those deep safety positions, and he's playing out of position, as Eric said, at the nickel position, you got to play more in the box. That kind of explains that, especially given he was pretty quality in the man coverage game. So I think as we continue to see this versatile player develop, we could see him kind of creep up the big board. He's currently certified as a 2nd or 3rd round. I think he could come up. Let's talk about Hood a little bit. Here's another guy who excels in man coverage, and he doesn't really have any weaknesses. I'd like to see in the combine and in the pro days if we're able to get a little bit more data that moves him from a guy maybe at the late 1st round into the 2nd round into a 1st pick, because maybe he'll be able to highlight some of those quality traits, such as his man coverage. That's a 7 trait right there. In the pro days, people get a little bit better sense of how he can move and adjust into a new system, given he was in so many systems. And with a little bit of, you know, consistency at the secondary position in the pros, we may see him pop out.
Thank you, Sam. We got more players on the board. Now it's time to talk to Sumer Sports senior analyst Sean Syed for some rapid-fire evaluations.
It's lightning round time. Jermod Mccoy is a quick corner with active hands. He is coming off an injury, but he has the recovery speed and ball skills to play at a high level. Brandon Cisse is a versatile defensive back with good recovery speed. He can stay in phase on deep throws and will look to improve playing through the hands at the next level. Keith Abney is a confident boundary corner. He has awareness when playing zone and is competitive in man coverage. Chris Johnson can stay in phase and space and will look to improve his burst. He has solid length and can play with vision and anticipation. AJ Haulcy is a rangy safety with playmaking ability. He can cover ground and has the burst to close from depth. Emmanuel Mcneil-Warren is a physical safety. He is a good tackler, has short area quickness, and shows an awareness in the run game.
All right, folks, please welcome to the evaluation an NFL veteran with over 10 years experience as a defensive back in the league. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Blackmon. Will, thanks for joining us.
I mean, that was quite the intro to projection. That's like, You need to read a book to people. That's what you
I
got.
appreciate that. I need you to be my agent is what I need.
I got you.
Thank you very much. Will, during your time at Boston College, can you talk about what it was like to be scouted for the first time as you were preparing to make it to the NFL?
I would say it was interesting. When I got to BC, my freshman year, I got to play as a true freshman. I was a young 17-year-old freshman thrown in the Wolves. I think my first game was against Stanford on national TV on ESPN. So it was pretty crazy. Then my second game was against Miami, that 2002 team, which had like 17 first-round picks. But then my second year, I had a pretty good year. And I remember going into my junior year, I made the cover of Border News magazine. And I was like, oh shoot, like this is getting real, you know, because I was a kid I was always in the moment. I just enjoyed playing football, and that was that. I didn't care what it was. If we had our football, if we had space, then I was ready to get it on. But yeah, when that happened, that's when it got real for me. So that was pretty wild.
Is there a certain aspect of playing corner that took the longest for you to understand?
I was a pretty smart football player, but I think I just allowed my athletic ability to take over. And for the most part, you know, it did me wonders. But also at the same time, I think teams took advantage because I was a gambler. I was aggressive. I was very athletic. So I remember my junior year, we played Notre Dame. I remember Brady Quinn hit me with the nastiest double move. He pump faked the hell out of me because I was jumping the slant all game long. Quick game, I was all over it. And that season, I got hit with a few double moves, which ultimately led me to getting benched that year. But I took that energy and, you know, boosted my return game. I think I had 2 touchdowns that year on special teams. So yeah, I think for me, it was just a matter of really understanding situations.
Was there a certain habit that you developed, whether it's in your preparation, whether it's in the weight room? Was there a certain habit that you developed early in your career that really allowed you to take your game to the next level?
I think I just had fun. Like, that was the biggest habit. I just love playing football, period. I started playing football since organized since I was 6 years old, but I just love playing the game. I love the competition, and that was just the best thing for me. I was such a historian in terms of watching the game, whether it was old school films from NFL films, Sable family doing their thing. So I used to just seriously just sit back and watch all these old school NFL film videos and really study the game. So I think just my habit was I was a student of the game historically, and I think that habit has pretty much carried me throughout my career, which, you know, helped me play for a long time.
I think with your position as a defensive back, one of the biggest things is confidence. How do you deal with giving up a big play and coming back and still having that confidence to be a great corner?
You just know what's going to happen. You know, I remember when I was in Seattle for a training camp, I remember the defensive back coach, the architect of Legion of Boom, Chris Richard, you know, I'd be like, man, he ran a out, go, come back, starter, go. And he would just be like, sometimes. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, sometimes, bro, like it happens, you know, they're in the league too, or in college, like they're on a scholarship too. Is like sometimes. So you just know, like, hey, it's bound to happen, right? I always, when I coach kids today or help whoever, I'm like, you know, name a boxer who hasn't been punched in the face. You know what I mean? Like, it's bound to happen if you're going to play that position. So understanding, like, hey, it's literally the next play, because you can give them a big play and the next play get a pick, or you can get a pick and next play, you know, you might give a big play. So that's just what it is.
There's a lot of discussion about the size and speed difference going from college to the league. Can you talk about that adjustment that you made coming out of BC into the league?
Well, what was crazy is when I came out of college, I was a big corner. I was 6'1", you know, about 200 pounds. Like, that was a big DB back then. The thing for me was I was fortunate because I could run. You know, I was a 4.4, 4.3 guy. I actually had a really good combine in terms of, you know, attributes and stuff like that. But I think I don't think it's really changed. I think at the end of the day, is like, will the guy compete? You know, you look at the defensive back from Indiana, Pons, you know, he's 5'8", you know, 5'9", but I mean, that dude was scrapping all night long, and that's kind of really what you want. If you can run, you know, if you're fearless, you have confidence, like that's a recipe that's you could start with. But at the end of the day, man, I think it comes down just to the DNA of the mindset, you know, for that player. Number one, can they run? You know, are they confident? Are they willing to battle and compete? And I think that those things still remain true.
Will, is there a single receiver that taught you a lot about the game or helped you level your game up?
My very first training camp in Green Bay, I had to go against Donald Driver. I learned with him, everything was an illusion. You know, like every route wasn't what you thought it was. You thought it was a slant, it was a out. You thought it was a post, he ended up running a corner. I remember my very first play, or one of them, like I said, he whooped my ass that year, training camp. But he ran a post, right? And so I broke on the post. Then he ran a corner, and I broke on the corner with him. And then I remember Brett Favre threw the football like towards the post, but I'm like, we're running a corner route. And I'm looking, I'm like, unless he's throwing to somebody else. And then last second, Driver turned back to the post, it hit him right in the face, and he caught it. And I was like, that is crazy. When he broke on the corner, Brett threw it at the post. So the timing that they had was crazy. And that's what I learned too. I'm like, if you take a receiver and he's on the same page with his quarterback, that's like unstoppable. Like, because now they're not even like calling routes. They're just giving eyes and understanding what's going on. So I think Brett Favre and Donald Driver, I got to see a glimpse of when two guys are on the same page, a quarterback and receiver, it's damn near impossible to stop.
Will, we talk a lot on the show about data and analytics. When you were in college, is that something that you really think your game would benefit from?
Man, I was just playing. I believe it would have, but again, I did not. My first 3 years at BC, I did not prepare as well as I should. And I think, in a sense, like, it did help me because I was just out there. I didn't care who lined up. I didn't care who it was. But I understood tendencies, you know. I understood tendency more so versus, like, the pure analytics now. But I think probably offensively, but defensively, it probably would have messed me up.
Understood. For all the young high school players out there, if there is one thing you would get across to all of them, what would that be?
Don't be afraid of the smoke. Like, if you see someone who's just as good or perhaps better, like, go there and compete. That's what you want. So, you know, you may want to team up with a group full of 5 stars and 4 stars and, okay, we're going to go around and just run people off the table. But maybe you want to go against those guys. And that's just something that I did and was able to hold true. Is I was so excited to play against somebody, you know, who gave me some resistance, who felt like they were better. Because then that's your true measuring stick. Like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is who's supposed to be the best. Okay, cool. Like, let's go. Let's battle. Let's find out where I am. Let's find out what it is. So I just really believe in embracing the competition. And if you get got, you get got. You know, I got mossed a couple of times in these camps, but then I came back around and mossed them right back. Like, that's just how it is. So the biggest thing is don't be afraid of the competition. Embrace it.
I love it. Will, I can't thank you enough for your time and for your insight. Thank you for joining us here on The Evaluation.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
During our episode about wide receivers, we talked about the rise of the slot receivers. But as offenses are evolving, defenses are changing too. Hybrid slot defenders are changing the math for defenses. This is Scheme Shift.
For years, the nickel defensive back was seen as a coverage specialist. This may have been your third best cornerback who had to handle quick slot receivers in passing-only situations. But as the league has changed, so has the nickel defender. With offenses shrinking the width of their formation to have more options to attack the defense, nickel defensive backs are pulled into the box to stop the run. These players have to flip the switch and play the run like a linebacker, work through traffic, and make tackles in the backfield. But one of the nickel defender's most important traits happens before the snap of the ball. If your nickel can only play the pass, teams will attack them in the run game. If your nickel can't cover, expect them to be caught in space against shifty wide receivers. Being able to cover like a cornerback and stop the run like a linebacker at the nickel defensive back position gives the defense the flexibility to deal with any potential threat the offense presents. If you want your defense to be better suited for the modern NFL, you may want a flexible chess piece at the nickel. The next defensive back to fill that role at a high level will find their name next to Cooper DeJeet, Kyle Hamilton, Jalen Petrie, and so many more.
Now, we welcome to the table Sumer Sports' Lindsay Rhodes. Lindsay?
One thing that I had the benefit of sitting off camera while you guys were doing your evaluations earlier, and I noticed that when my colleague Sam talked about some concerns regarding speed for Caleb Downs, you made a face.
Yeah, I just saw it a little bit different in terms of, I think that's the scouting eye aspect of it, where I just don't see a concern in terms of the play speed from what I witnessed. And I just think that's the thing about the nature of the safety position. Look, you're not going to put Caleb Downs in the middle of the post in cover 3. That's not how you're going to effectively want to use him. You're going to want to use that playmaking ability, coming top down, coming down around the line of scrimmage, and doing what he does, which is impacting the game at the short to intermediate levels and as a blitzer. So yeah, I just found that kind of interesting.
It's so fascinating that the data can tell you one thing. And then one of the things that I feel like I have to interject here that we say all the time at Sumer, because we're dealing with a lot of data, all stats need context. Like, you can't just look at the stat and take that as a truth. There's always context because there's 11 guys on each side of the ball that are moving around. And so every number requires you to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive and say, like, does this matter? Is this? And so I love the fact that there was a number that popped up there that's a real number that's derived from tracking data that makes us go, whoa, let's look further into that. And then the answer is, as you said, the number might be the number, but it's not necessarily concerning for all of these different reasons.
This is a guy, to me, that if you're in a pinch and you lose some corners, he could play outside at corner. So to me, his speed has never been a question. So I was somewhat surprised as well.
One of the things I think about with the changing landscapes of the corners is I think about my playing days in college. And primarily, you saw a lot of the corners coming out were in that 5'11", 6 foot, maybe 6'1" range. But now you're seeing so many tall corners. How did this come to be? Why do we have so many tall corners in the league now?
Well, I'll let you speak on that first because you had a group in Seattle that was very big on the outside.
Yeah, so Ron Wolf was the general manager with the Green Bay Packers for a long time, Super Bowl winning GM. And when Randy Moss came into the league, we had parameters set where we were not going to take any corners that were 5'10", 4 or below. We literally took them off the board. So if you didn't meet the standard of being 5'10", 4, you were coming off the board. And so that was the evolution of where these parameters from that system that I was involved in came from.
But what we looked at, number one, we knew that we had Randy, so we also knew that he had length and speed to counter anybody that they drafted. But we also knew that if you're that tall, it's hard to bend. And so when you have receivers who can bend and get out of their breaks quickly, that makes it tough if you're a corner. So a lot of times, if you see a corner that's that big, then they can't necessarily get in and out of their breaks as quick as that receiver because obviously the receiver knows where they're going. And the thing that we always looked at a lot too at that nickel position was how fast can your eyes watch two different receivers at the same time. Because inside, it's almost like playing defensive tackle, which you have some familiarity with. A little bit. There's two guys coming at you quick. And so if you can't make that adjustment, then you can't play in there. Now, size, it does help you, but it doesn't help you if your eyes can't get off of one fast enough to see the other guy. And a lot of times they're blocking, and so, they're physically trying to hurt you. But sometimes they're just running, and they're running fast, but you have to have the eye to be able to go from 1 to 2 in a short amount of time. And if you can't do it, you can't play in there.
So what happens when you have certain parameters for height and weight for DB, but let's say you have a guy like, I think of D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, who is not going to measure much over, he might be 5'9", but when you watch him play, he's physical, he does everything right. Do you make an exception for a guy like him?
I think you always have to make an exception. There's compensating factors to every player. Not every player is going to be the ideal height, weight, speed, but a guy like that, he shows up with compensating factors. He's got excellent ball skills. He's got excellent instincts. He makes plays all over the field in the run game and the pass game. I just think that those overriding factors allow a guy like him to make plays in any situation.
Yeah, and I was always taught if you came across the exceptions, then you just have to study them more closely. You have to take deeper dives when you're going to come across cross exceptions to the rule. And because, look, that's when you're now in this day and age, just where the analytical information is so helpful, and you're going to look at both the subjective and both the objective. And when it comes to how you're analyzing a player, that's going to be an outlier because, they're basically the hit rate. You're shrinking your hit rate when you go smaller, and so to Jeff's point, you do want to make sure that those compensating factors are real and can manifest themselves at the NFL level, not just what you're seeing at the college level.
We talk a lot about straight line speed. We talk about the 40, but are there other athletic traits that you're looking for with top DBs?
Well, for me, the hips are the most essential part of that whole equation because you have to change direction literally on every play, whether it's to take, the route from the top of the route and make that cut horizontally, vertically, but you're always going to have to make that transition. And if your hips can't adjust quick enough, which also ties into the speed conversation, then now you're a step behind. And you'll see a lot of guys, when you're watching games, they slip, which means that their balance and their base is off, which also ties into their hips. But you can't play against these top receivers if you slip too often. A, because they're so good at getting in and out of their breaks and making everything look the same. But B, because if you are counting steps, which is what the top corners do, they're counting their steps against the receiver's steps. So if you slip in that process, now they've got that extra step. And so it's all about the hips and the balance and how you make 2 or 3 steps overall. So it's not a 10-yard process, it's not a 20-yard process. It's really just 2 or 3 steps that make the difference on every play.
So I'd never heard that. So is that like internal math?
You and I are both like,
right. They're
North.
counting steps. I didn't.
Yeah. So
didn't know.
receivers, all their routes are based upon steps. That's why they line up with a certain foot up. That's why their head is a certain way. So everything they do is based upon their steps. And so as a corner, you also have to use the same processes. And so when you get to the top of the route, if you slip or if you take too many steps, that leaves that separation that those top quarterbacks, that's all they're looking for. They only need a certain amount of space to get a ball in a window. And so if your steps are off based upon your footwork and your hips and your transitions, now you're beat.
Can you make your hips better? Like if you're a high school player right now and you're like, I kind of have tight hips, this is a weakness of mine.
To a certain degree. Guys with tight hips, you usually know it pretty fast. Yeah. Now you can quicken that, and you see a lot of drills that will help you with that. But if you have bad hips, they're not going to get to the point where now that's not a flaw of yours.
Find a different position.
Yeah, if you have bad hips, it's going to show.
It's hard to take a stiff athlete and make them flexible.
Yes.
It just doesn't typically happen.
So one of the things that we sort of talked about here is how hard it is to measure the cornerback position in particular from a data standpoint. This is something that if you don't watch tape and you don't watch the games and you just pulled up the numbers, you'd be like, who is good? And filter them for all of the different things, and you'd get a whole bunch of different names. So it's really important to figure out which stats matter. And for more on that, here's Stats in the Shadows.
When it comes to secondary players, the stats in the shadows, target rate and production allowed per coverage snap, matter substantially more than traditional stats like interceptions or tackles. Let's look at the 2024 Defensive Player of the Year award. 7 defensive backs received votes. Patrick Surtain, Kirby Joseph, Xavier McKinney, Kyle Hamilton, Trent McDuffie, Derek Stingley, and Christian Benford. Surtain won the award with over 66% of voting points. However, all other vote getters had more tackles than him, and Joseph and McKinney had double the number of interceptions. How is it possible that Surtain still won despite this? It is because coverage is a weak link system. This means that a single player's mistake can lead to a successful offensive play. So teams tend to attack the weakest link on the field. The stats in the shadows, target rate, and EPA allowed per coverage snap account for the weak link nature of the game. Based on these, Patrick Surtain was the strongest link in the league. His target rate was around the 80th percentile for all coverage players, with over 200 snaps going back to 2006. That's more than 20 percentage points better than McDuffie and Derek Stingley.
He was also above the 80th percentile in expected points added allowed per coverage snap, almost 25 percentage points better than Stingley and Christian Benford. Blend those two stats together, and you've gotten the best cover corner in the league by far. So during the draft, when you see flashy interception or tackle totals, remember that the stats in the shadows, target rate, and production allowed per coverage snap are the real ones that matter.
That's such an interesting metric. I never think about the strongest link and the way the DBs work together.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, especially, with our discussion about Patrick. I mean, just seeing what we see with our eyes as scouts and then seeing the metrics to back that up, that's always awesome.
And also coming off of that season, what did the Broncos do in the draft? They go draft a cornerback. So maybe you were going to have to throw at Surtain a little bit more, strengthen all of the different links, and good luck.
That's the idea. You can never have enough good corners. So if we get another one that's strong on the other side, the ball has to come to our strength at some point.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you to the team at Sumer. Thank you, Will Blackmon. And remember, draft night is loud, but evaluations are quiet. And we live in the quiet.